What's going on, YouTube? Culturedog Sam Hatch back here with another film review. Just more and more kind of dropping some thoughts because I really haven't seen the film long enough ago to really kind of process some major review talking points on it, and just kind of gonna spitball a little bit because I saw it this morning. And the film in question is Luca Guadagnino's reimagining of Dario Argento's classic film Suspiria, and this time it's a different take on it. It's the same story essentially about a young girl, Susie Banyan, this time played by Dakota Johnson, who travels to Germany to join a prestigious dance troupe and learn her craft, and then in the meantime discover that there's some other craft going on behind closed doors, and that there are other people in danger, and there's a whole bunch of other side characters that are trying to discover the enigmatic happenings of this dance academy and what's going on. It definitely plays around with the plot of the original film, and definitely in terms of major terms of setting and some of the kind of end goals. It's interesting. It has a different look because originally I was a little skeptical because I was a huge fan of the original, and it was the first Dario Argento film I'd seen, and it's kind of like Technicolor nightmare of very, very bright primary colors just burned itself into my brain forever. So I was a little skeptical hearing that there was going to be another film version of it, but depending on who was involved, maybe someone could pull it off. And obviously from the original trailers I saw, Luca Guadagnino had a much different kind of patina that was being applied to this newer film. And then hearing that Tom York was doing the soundtrack, I was like, all right, cool. What are you going to do? Nobody can out-Goblin Goblin, who did the original score. So you got to do something different. So yeah, I'm a huge Radiohead fan. So Tom York being attached was definitely something to make me a little bit more intrigued by it. So the new film, it does, on the surface, it's interesting because it's a modern retelling of the film, but it's so in love with retro storytelling techniques, like very jagged zooms and stuff like that it's funny how a modern film is such a throwback, even more of a throwback than the original. And then it toes that line a little bit where it could have been super hyper pretentious. I don't know, maybe it is. Just the aspect of injecting a lot of current politics. It does take an interesting tact. Instead of updating the period in which the film is set, it actually says, well, let's just keep it in 1977, the time the original film was released. But it almost just seems like it's almost like I don't know, self-important filmmaking 101. Like, instead of just telling the story again, it's like, well, it's 1977. Let's inject some, what's going on then? Oh, the German Autumn. Oh, we got to inject that into the film. And of course, you got to throw in a lot of heavy dose of, post-World War II cultural cringe and, connections to the Nazi regime. And then you got to have, just nonstop, like, concrete, terror, just this brutalist visual nightmare. And it's like, wow, that's really, kind of avant-garde and envelope pushing, were it not for the fact that that's like a cliche city. That's like what anybody does with a film that's set in Berlin. Like, it would be far more of an envelope pusher if it rejected all that stuff, because I mean it's just cinematic tropes at this point, and we've had films recently, a lot of Berlin films, so like maybe Atomic Blonde was the only one that kind of pushed the envelope in a little bit and showed some energy and life to the city, and then but everything else is definitely falling in step with Bridge of Spies. And so on the one hand, it's very smart to avoid the hyper saturated colors of Dario Argento's film, and to embrace something a little bit more, desaturated and almost monochromatic, which this film does. But, on the one hand, it's setting it in Berlin, and just, it just seems like a little bit too much at times. But that said, it strikes a mood for sure. And this film is, just all about mood. Even though there are lighting fixtures within this building, it's like the light itself cannot penetrate a room much past this like kind of like 2-foot radius of influence. Everything's just impenetrably dark, and of course, again, cliche 101, it's just raining nonstop, and it's just gloom times 20 outside, and there's these huge windows all over the place that allow you to see just how dismal and hopeless Berlin is in 1977. So of course they make great use of the wall still standing, and there's a psychotherapist character who often travels from west to east and is given a lot of screen time in this film. There was a kind of doctor character played by Udo Kier in the original, and this one is this sad sack of an older man named Joseph Klemperer who has contact with Chloe Grace Moretz's character. She's Patricia Hingle, this girl, much like in the original film, that kind of teased you with this girl under duress and is saying that there's some nasty stuff going on at this dance academy. She's coming to this therapist for help, and then is told that she's deluded, etc. And he is also haunted by a past of a woman that he lost in the war. So her suspicions eventually become his suspicions, and one of Susie's friends at the academy is also slowly becoming suspicious of what's going on. But it's got an interesting twist on the whole kind of mystery aspect of it. It tells you pretty much what's going on, or the basics of what's going on, almost immediately. So that's cool, especially if you already know the story, or if you've seen the original. Just dispense with the mystery, I guess, and leave that to the original film. This one it almost toes the line of becoming more from the side of the elders, the matriarchy of the dance academy, but not quite. It still teases us with some things in the shadows and some mysteries, but a lot of it's worn on its sleeve. But yeah, so these characters are the ones that are investigating. But Susie Banyan is definitely caught from different cloth in this one, as it becomes apparent as the film progresses. She is not as interested in solving the mysteries going on. So that's really fascinating. I did appreciate, I think probably first and foremost about this film, is that it treats the dance at the heart of the film a lot more seriously than Dario Argento's film did. And it gets to express all these facets of dance choreography and the intensity of it that just, wasn't really in the original film. So that was cool, and I'm glad that they kind of took the time to process that and kind of throw it out there, and it does actually culminate in a performance, which you've probably seen some of the stills from used in the promotions for it. So that worked for me far better than kind of throwing all the Red Army faction stuff in there and kind of hammering that home. So yeah, there is a backdrop of the Lufthansa hijacking and the standoff going on in the background of this film, and then even Patricia Hingle's character is potentially tied with the RAF, and there's that whole thing going on. But yeah, it's funny because when I was talking about Halloween, which the new one directed by David Gordon Green, who was actually attached to this project at one point, I just got barraged with all sorts of bizarre commentary in the comments on my video, and one person, of course, was espousing the hatred of men, and that it paints men as useless, foolish characters, and that sort of thing. And I'm like, wow, in the words of the Joker, like, wait till they get a load of this film, because there's full on scenes with these cops being stripped naked by these witches, and as they kind of laugh and cackle at the one guy's penis as they're kind of messing with it with this creepy kind of hook device. And yeah, so it is all about the matriarchy of this, but of this academy, and it does get into women's place in society post World War II and how that changed, and it kind of shows this little microcosm of this dance academy. But it's, for the most part, it's just the men are not either of here nor there to this world. It's it doesn't go too far out of its way to ridicule them, but it does show that the police are completely ineffectual in the face of this coven of witches, if that's what they are. There's a lot of kind of give and take as to whether or not there's something actually occult going on, or if there is, potentially something else. It may be some sort of resistance or some sort of, underground, cabal of some sorts. And that's what, Dr. Klimper is trying to figure out. Everyone, crushed it across the board. All the actresses were really good. Mia Goth was great. Grace-Moretz was, intense. Dakota Johnson, I thought, knocked it out of the park. Tilda Swinton, this is the kind of role she was born for. Madame Blanc, this very, stern yet caring yet terrifying dance instructor who, puts her heart and soul into her work. And I loved how it just kind of played with the idea of, art being ritual, and, where those lines kind of blur. Yeah, fascinating stuff. So, like I said, it seemed a little heavy-handed maybe in its kind of embrace of a lot of kind of art house tropes and cliches and everything, but it, I think the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. There's a lot of, obviously gorgeous cinematography going on, even if there's some really ugly stuff in the background, or just ugly settings, ugly architecture, etc. There's just a beauty in it. And while the film isn't, particularly frightening or scary, it's more of just like a dark meditation, one of those kind of nightmares that just kind of seeps into you. It does get pretty grisly at times, and unflinching in its eye. It's staring at these grotesque horrors as they keep unfolding. There's a pretty amazing scene with a dance number that's a counterpoint to a kind of like danse macabre, this dance of death that's going on in another place at the same time. Yeah, really fascinating stuff. And it almost goes on too long, but I think that's almost the point of the scene. And yeah, it's it'll put its hooks into you. I think I'm going to be, maybe hopefully seeing it again once in theaters, but I'll definitely be picking it up on Blu-ray later on. It does not supplant the original for me. I mean, the original is still going to be, untouchable, Dario Argento masterpiece. It's, the gateway to Italian horror cinema for me. But this one's, it's got a lot of great mojo. I'm going to be picking up the score too. I'm such a huge Thom Yorke Radiohead fan. I usually grab all that stuff, anything they put out immediately. But I really wanted to watch the film first before I picked up the score, and I had heard a lot of it already on YouTube and the ads. But it is interesting that Amazon's putting this out. It feels very A24 at times. It's got a kind of direction that's not too far off from The Witch. So you can tell that A24's created this new environment where people are kind of trying to capture this indie horror zeitgeist going on. But yeah, I liked some of the revisioning of the script, and I like the concept of Dakota Johnson's Susie Bannion almost being this. Yeah, it's almost like the perils of Mary Sue. She's this Mary Sue-esque character, but it becomes much more than that. Which is great, it's because everything does seem a little too easy. She's just this nobody from out in the middle of Mennonite country who's now suddenly in Berlin, and everything starts kind of falling into place. And whether or not that's demonic or nefarious or malevolent in some fashion, or something along those lines, or just something because she's naturally talented, you'll find out as the film progresses. But yeah, very art house. So I don't know how wide this thing's going to open. I think it's at about 250 theaters right now, and I'm actually pretty lucky that it was opening in central Connecticut. It wasn't even like southern Connecticut, which is usually close enough to New York that things will come there and not go much farther north. And yeah, I've heard from some other friends that were saying that Boston was the closest to them to see the film. So I was actually lucky enough to catch it. It's shot on film too, which is nice. I saw it projected digitally, unfortunately, but I would like to see an actual film print of it. Maybe when it comes to my local art house theater in Hartford. But yeah, it's pretty captivating stuff, and it definitely puts its stink on you. And I'm looking forward to checking it out again. And it's one of those films that has a pretty dense final act, and it's interesting too. It's a film in 6 acts and an epilogue, and it even kind of breaks it down for you, a la a Quentin Tarantino thing like Kill Bill. So that, and maybe even that structure helps it seem a little bit shorter because it's constantly telling you, when you're moving into a new act, and it feels like it moves a little bit faster because of that. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed it, and still have to kind of gather my thoughts on it a little bit more. But it's some fascinating, grisly, grotesque stuff. Not inherently terrifying, but yeah, it's something that you're going to wake up from the next day and be like, did I see that? Did that happen? What? I just had a weird dream last night. So that kind of thing, which I appreciated. It's a good 2 a.m. movie, so eventually, when it hits cable or streaming or something like that, or you get the Blu-ray or whatever, put it on at 2 in the morning when you're just kind of in that zone. But yeah, so there you go. Suspiria. It's back out there, and yeah, it's some pretty intense stuff from Luca Guadagnino, and if you haven't seen the original Dario Argento, grab that as well. There's some great stuff. I think, who put that out recently? Was it Severin or Synapse? One of them. Yeah, so it's back in print on Blu-ray. So, and there's plenty of older renditions out there from Blue Underground, Anchor Bay, etc. So check that out as well. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. If you saw it, let me know below what you thought, and yell at me for supporting the matriarchy or whatever. Do that too. And yeah, we'll talk to you later. Cheers.